his mother's milk, absorbs it with all that he touches, all that he sees. He is so exclusively fed upon it, so poisoned and penetrated by it in all his being, that later, however powerful his natural mind, he has to make unheard of efforts to deliver himself from it, and then never completely succeeds. We have one proof of this in our modern idealists, and another in our doctrinaire materialists, the German communists. They have found no way to shake off the religion of the state. The supernatural world, the divine world, once well established in the imagination of the peoples, the development of the various religious systems has followed its natural and logical course, conforming, moreover, in all things to the contemporary development of economical and political relations, of which it has been in all ages in the world of religious fancy the faithful reproduction and divine consecration. Thus has the collective and historical insanity which calls itself religion been developed since fetishism, passing through all the stages from polytheism to Christian monotheism. The second step in the development of religious beliefs, undoubtedly the most difficult next to the establishment of a separate divine world, was precisely this transition from polytheism to monotheism, from the religious materialism of the pagans to the spiritualistic faith of the Christians. She-pagan gods, and this was their principal characteristic, were first of all exclusively national gods. Very numerous, they necessarily retained a more or less material character, or rather, they were so numerous because they were material, diversity being one of the principal attributes of the real world. The pagan gods were not yet strictly the negation of real things, they were only a fantastic exaggeration of them. We have seen how much this transition cost the Jewish people, constituting, so to speak, its entire history. In vain did Moses and the prophets preach the one God. The people always relapsed into their primitive idolatry, into the ancient and comparatively much more natural and convenient faith in many good gods, more material, more human, and more palpable. Jehovah himself, their sole God, the God of Moses and the prophets, was still an extremely national God, who, to reward and punish his faithful followers, his chosen people, used material arguments, often stupid, always gross and cruel. It does not even appear that faith in his existence implied a negation of the existence of earlier gods. The Jewish God did not deny the existence of all these rivals. He simply did not want his people to worship them side by side with him, because before all Jehovah was a very jealous God. His first commandment was this: I am the Lord God, and thou shalt have no other gods before me. Jehovah, then, was only a first draft, very material and very rough, of the supreme deity of modern idealism. Moreover, he was only a national god, like the Russian god worshipped by the German generals, subjects of the Tsar and patriots of the empire of all the Russias. Like the German god, whom the pietists and the German generals, subjects of William I at Berlin, will no doubt soon proclaim. The Supreme Being cannot be a national God. He must be the God of entire humanity. Nor can the Supreme Being be a material being. He must be the negation of all matter, pure spirit. Two things have proved necessary to the realization of the worship of the Supreme Being. 1. A realization, such as it is, of humanity by the negation of nationalities and national forms of worship. 2. A development, already far advanced, of metaphysical ideas in order to spiritualize the gross Jehovah of the Jews. The first condition was fulfilled by the Romans, though in a very negative way, no doubt, by the conquest of most of the countries known to the ancients, and by the destruction of their national institutions. The gods of all the conquered nations, gathered in the pantheon, mutually cancelled each other. This was the first draft of humanity, very gross and quite negative. As for the second condition, the spiritualization of Jehovah, that was realized by the Greeks long before the conquest of their country by the Romans. They were the creators of metaphysics. Greece, in the cradle of her history, had already found from the Orient a divine world which had been definitely established in the traditional faith of her peoples. This world had been left and handed over to her by the Orient. In her instinctive period, prior to her political history, she had developed and prodigiously humanized this divine world through her poets, and when she actually began her history, she already had a religion ready-made, the most sympathetic and noble of all the religions which have existed, so far at least as a religion, that is, a lie, can be noble and sympathetic. Her great thinkers, and no nation has had greater than Greece, found the divine world established not only outside of themselves in the people, but also in themselves as a habit of feeling and thought, and naturally they took it as a point of departure. That they made no theology, that is, that they did not wait in vain to reconcile dawning reason with the absurdities of such a God, as did the scholastics of the Middle Ages, was already much in their favour. They left the gods out of their speculations, and attached themselves directly to the divine idea, one invisible, omnipotent, eternal, and absolutely spiritualistic, but impersonal. As concerns spiritualism, then, the Greek metaphysicians, much more than the Jews, were the creators of the Christian God. The Jews only added to it the brutal personality of their Jehovah. That a sublime genius like the divine Plato could have been absolutely convinced of the reality of the divine idea shows us how contagious, how omnipotent is the tradition of the religious mania even on the greatest minds. Besides, we should not be surprised at it, since even in our day the greatest philosophical genius which has ever existed since Aristotle and Plato, Hegel, in spite even of Kant's criticism, imperfect and too metaphysical though it be, which had demolished the objectivity or reality of the divine ideas, tried to replace these divine ideas upon their transcendental or celestial throne. It is true that Hegel went about his work of restoration in so impolite a manner that he killed the good God for ever. He took away from these ideas their divine halo, by showing to whoever will read him that they were never anything more than a creation of the human mind, running through history in search of itself. To put an end to all religious insanities and the divine mirage, he left nothing lacking but the utterance of those grand words which were said after him, almost at the same time, by two great minds who had never heard of each other. Ludwig Feuerbach, the disciple and demolisher of Hegel, in Germany, and Auguste Comte, the founder of positive philosophy, in France. These words were as follows: quote, "Metaphysics are reduced to psychology." End quote. All the metaphysical systems have been nothing else than human psychology developing itself in history. Today it is no longer difficult to understand how the divine ideas were born, how they were created in succession by the abstractive faculty of man. Man made the gods. But in the time of Plato this knowledge was impossible. The collective mind, and consequently the individual mind as well, even that of the greatest genius, was not ripe for that. Scarcely had it said with Socrates, "Know thyself." This self-knowledge existed only in a state of intuition. In fact, it amounted to nothing. Hence it was impossible for the human mind to suspect that it was itself the sole creator of the divine world. It found the divine world before it. It found it as history, as tradition, as a sentiment, as a habit of thought, and it necessarily made it the object of its loftiest speculations. Thus was born metaphysics, and thus were developed and perfected the divine ideas, the basis of spiritualism. It is true that after Plato there was a sort of inverse movement in the development of the mind. Aristotle, the true father of science and positive philosophy, did not deny the divine world, but concerned himself with it as little as possible. He was the first to study, like the analyst and experimenter that he was, logic, the laws of human thought, and at the same time the physical world, not in its ideal illusory essence, but in its real aspect. After him the Greeks of Alexandria established the first school of the positive scientists. They were atheists, but their atheism left no mark on their contemporaries. Science tended more and more to separate itself from life. After Plato, divine ideas were rejected in metaphysics themselves.